We are back on the Pick Six, and you know what else is back? Losing for the Green Bay Packers. An ugly one against the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot of talk about things maybe being a little bit better offensively. Is it actually any better offensively? We'll get to that. We'll talk Jordan Love. We'll look ahead to the Chargers matchup. All that's coming up in the next hour right here on the Pick Six. And welcome to the Pick Six. I am Brendan Dworzinski. He is roommates with Connor Stallions. Thank you so much for joining us on the Pick Six this week. Just kidding. That is Jacob Westendorf, Packers writer for PackersCentral.com, part of the Sports Illustrated Fan Nation Vertical. We are so happy to be back with you this week. Although, I gotta be honest, Jacob, we miss a week, and it comes right after the Packers actually win a game because we were both deathly ill. This week, we are back fully planning for days now to be back on schedule, and it is coming fresh off a Packers loss. So if you wanted to blame us for the Packers losing, we would not be the only culprits, but I think it's at least somewhat fair at this point.
Yeah, I have no rebuttal. It's tough to argue with all that evidence being thrown in our face. It's kind of tough to argue against the fact that it's the Packers, and it's our fault. I often say what the Packers are, I believe now 9-15 since my son was born. I'd have to check the math again on that. Yeah, so maybe I got to give him up for adoption. I don't know yet. Everything is on the table at this point.
Hey, it's got to be. This team needs some fixing, needs it urgently. By the way, the beard looking luscious today.
Yeah. I do not shave this like almost ever. I cut this all the way off for No Shave November, and I haven't shaved since October 31st now, except for my neck. I don't want to look like Kyle Orton, so I chop that away every so often to make sure that I don't look like a homeless person. And yeah, it's a good look, man. Are you one of those people, like my best friend in the whole world? We make fun of him so much because he cannot grow. You've seen Joe Dirt, right? American Cinema Classic.
Of course.
There. Yeah. So remember how he says like his facial hair doesn't grow in right here and it doesn't grow in right here or whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, Baki's doesn't grow in like anywhere. So are you one of those people that can't? I mean, you got a little bit of shadow going on, but does it grow in at all? I don't think I've ever seen you with anything.
No, it really doesn't. It's a little patchy, like right here. I can get it fairly full down on the chin, but it's A, not a good look for me, and B, it can't grow fully in. During the peak of the pandemic, I let it go, and it sucked, man. I looked like shit. It was not a good look for me. So I will let it get to like full shadow across everything, and then I shave it. It's not as bad as when my hair gets long, at least from my perspective. My wife, she won't ever make comments about my facial hair unless it's like really scraggly. Whereas every like 4 weeks or whatever it is, I get wow, your hair's really long, which I have very intelligently learned means it's time for you to go get a haircut. I don't usually get that for my facial hair. For the up top though, yeah, I know what that code means at this point. We've got plenty to get to outside of Jacob's facial hair here on the program today. We'll look back on the matchup against the Steelers. We're going to ask about the offense, and I've been curious where Jacob lands on this because I thought that the offense process-wise looked at least a little bit better against the Steelers. Is it enough? And do we agree on that? So we're going to get to that. I know everybody's been talking about that since the game this past Sunday. We'll look ahead to the Chargers matchup, and we're going to get Jacob's thoughts as well on Justin Herbert. We're going to get both of our thoughts on Justin Herbert, but I actually don't know how my partner here feels about the long, luscious locks quarterback of the Los Angeles Chargers. So we'll get to that all coming up over the course of the next hour. But as always, we're going to lead things off with our extra point. Jacob with a great one today. As always, a fantastic one. We're both Midwesterners to the core. I grew up in Illinois. I live in Kansas now. Jacob is in Illinois, as we all know, right there in beautiful Winnebago County. So when you get a chance to go to either coast, which one are you picking, East Coast or West Coast?
Yeah, so my stance on this has changed, and it changed this October. So I've been to the East Coast a couple times. My aunt and uncle live out there, so I've gone to New York. I've been to Yankee Stadium, all that cool stuff. And there's some cool stuff about being out east. However, nothing hits like the 9 a.m. big noon college football kickoff on Saturday and the 10 a.m. NFL football on Sunday, and you're done for the day by 7, 8 o'clock. And I don't have to wait up until, 11:30, midnight, whatever. And like postseason baseball, like, hell, man, I remember like baseball playoff games that I've stayed up and watched that were well into the 11 o'clock midnight hour. And I'm old now, man. I can't do that shit anymore. So, if I don't get my solid 7, 8 hours overnight, the next day is ruined. And sometimes the next 2. So West Coast is best coast, man. There's that is a Justice Mosqueda theory that I am tossing in there, but having hung out in Vegas for that week when Green Bay was out there, and then Colorado when Green Bay went to Denver. Not only that, have you ever been to Colorado? It is absolutely gorgeous. It is about $1 billion for a studio apartment, so I could never live there. But it is beautiful. I loved it out there. And I like the East Coast. There's plenty of stuff to like about travel. I think what I've learned the most from my travels is I am a true Midwesterner at heart. We can go through live for that for a bunch of different spots here. But yeah, when it comes to these two, West Coast is best coast, man. And it's largely due to the sports calendar and games starting at like the Packers and Raiders started at like 5 o'clock. That was awesome.
See, for me, I'm staying up late. Like I don't want college football to start at 9 a.m. I don't want to get up until 10:30 and get like half an hour warm up before kickoff. I don't want to be up that early. East Coast starts a little bit late. That's why Central and Mountain are obviously the best, although Mountain is more of a figment of our imagination than a real thing. But no, give me the East Coast all day. And I've spent a lot of my life traveling to the East Coast for beach purposes. I like the West Coast. My wife's sister, my sister-in-law, she lives in San Diego. Lovely place. I've always enjoyed going there. I haven't spent a ton of time on the West Coast, but no, I'm East Coast all the way. Southern East Coast for the most part. Midwest, American South, really my wheelhouse in terms of our geography here in the United States. But yeah, I prefer to be up late, so I don't usually mind a game that starts at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I'm staying up for the Hawaii game no matter what, whether it's kicking off when it's still light outside or when it's dark outside. I'm staying up for it. So
well, we're in the Midwest now, so it's dark outside at like 4:30 anyways. So what's the difference? I will make one request to revisit this, right? Your wife still loves you, I presume, right?
I've been told, yes.
You've been told. Okay, so you guys engage in things that most married people do. If one of those things were to happen to turn into a child on a specific day, then
I thought you were talking about arguing. Oh, okay.
Oh, no, well, I mean, sometimes that leads to the thing I'm talking about too, but
well, yes, it is always different. This is one of those things where like I do not have a child, let alone multiple children.
I just told you I'm old. I'm old, man. And like I'm, like people, how like dog years are like 8 of whatever. Like parent years are so like I'm 32. You're how old?
I'm 29.
Okay, so I'm only 3 years older than you are, but I'm actually like 14 years older than you are. So whatever the math is on that, a child ages you quickly. The reason I started shaving my head is because I was terrified the hair was going to start growing in gray. I'm only kind of joking when I say that.
Hey, look, I get it. Like I understand. One of my co-hosts in Topeka, he's got 2 kids. He had 2 kids under 2 for a while. Like he's always, I went to bed at 9 o'clock and I woke up so early. I'm like, well, damn, dude, that sucks for you. Like, I wrap up next time. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I prefer to wake up late, set my own hours, and go to bed late as well. So, slightly different stages of life at the moment. All right, we've got to get to some football here. By the way, I have been to Colorado. I almost went to school in Colorado. That was my number 2 choice. Would have been to go to Colorado State, but I don't smoke enough or any weed, so that wasn't really a great fit for me. I'm being
facetious. Do you take off? But do you take off your hat and your glasses when you talk to somebody though?
At times, not my hat. My hat, the hat stays on. It's. I make fun of you for it, but honestly, I also, anytime I leave the house or go on camera, have a hat on. So it's.
Are you not getting that joke?
No.
Oh, the Colorado State coach said that about Deion Sanders. How like he takes his hat.
Oh yeah, the Mike Norvell, yeah, or Jay Norvell, the other Norvell brother.
Yeah. Do you believe yet? Speaking of Colorado, do you believe yet?
No. Maybe next year. Maybe next time they completely overturn the roster and still can't make an offensive line. Maybe at that point I'll believe. But
maybe they'll be bowl eligible. Maybe they'll figure out a way to do that.
Best of luck, Dion. Best of luck, Coach Prime. All right, let's get to the Green Bay Packers. They lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers this weekend, 23-19. I didn't get to watch the majority of the game live. I got to listen to a decent chunk of the third quarter and most of the fourth quarter, the radio call, Wayne and Rock. And then I went back and I rewatched the game on Sunday night when I had some time. And I came away with a lot of the same takeaways that I think many people did. The defense is still butt cheeks. And if you can't stop that running game, there's no saving you. Like it's over. It has never been more over than it is right now.
Don't expose yourself. Don't expose yourself. The way they do things is perfectly okay.
Yeah, perfectly normal. Find a new slant. It's actually totally fine to never fit the run ever. But the run defense stunk. Jaden Reed's a dude. I'm glad that's a train I jumped on early on because I think he really is a difference maker. Wicks had a good game. Thought the offensive line actually played decently well, although Runyon obviously is not really worth our time at this point. But then you get to Jordan Love, and then you get to actually moving the ball and the process of putting together a competent offense. I will just lead off by saying I don't think the operation as a whole was good against Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh's a good defense. Like that plays into it too. The fact that they've got legit dudes up front. TJ Watt's obviously a stud, although I thought Tom held his own against him pretty well. Highsmith's a really good player. Didn't have Minkah Fitzpatrick on the back end, but they've got talent back there. Patrick Peterson found the fountain of youth in just the right time to intercept a pass. We'll get to that as part of this discussion. I didn't think overall it was good. I thought there were things that looked a little bit better. I think a little more creativity has seeped into the play calling over the last couple of weeks. I thought for me, Jordan Love, and I guess this kind of blends in with our weekly look back on how Love played. I thought he let it rip a little bit more in this game. He just, broadcast view, how much can you really tell? I'm not a pro at the tape study, but it felt like to me, he was not as hesitant to throw the ball in certain situations, which I think is a positive. It doesn't always end well. I think that's a positive part of the process. I'm not all of a sudden on the train that, yes, Jordan Love is the one and the offense is fixed and they're great again. But I did feel like the overall process of what the Packers were trying to accomplish offensively was a little bit more coherent. I thought it was a little crisper overall, and I thought it was some of the most positive signs we've seen in at least a little while. I thought it was better than the win from a week ago, and even that against the Rams was a little bit better than we had seen previously. So I think incrementally we have seen slight improvements, but I'm curious where you land on this because we didn't talk about it before the show. Do you feel like it is better at all over the last couple of weeks, specifically against Pittsburgh? And is it enough to give you any sort of encouragement that it is trending in the right direction?
Yeah, I presume you've seen the new version of the Bad News Bears, right? With Billy Bob Thornton as Morris Buttermaker. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Remember the blonde kid with the long hair? And after the game, they're talking about how like they've gone from this to this or whatever. And he says, great. We went from suck to stink. And then Buttermaker says like, see, that's good. We're getting better.
Yeah.
Kind of how I feel about the Packers offense right now. Like,
that's fair.
I could not have felt worse about them coming out of the Minnesota game. I was talking last night to Jacob Morley and Twitter favorite Trey Watson on the Pack-A-Day podcast about like Jordan Love and just kind of this general topic. And Morley was like, however you feel about PFF, Jordan Love's 3 highest graded games are the last 3 games. And I was like, I have no idea how they got that out of the Minnesota game. Like,
yeah.
I mean, were there some things that were better than maybe what the box score said? Sure. Do we feel a little differently about the game if Jaden Reed catches that pass instead of Josh Metellus? Sure. Otherwise, I don't know, man. But the Rams game looked fine, I guess. And they ran the ball for 180 some odd yards. The passing game still not great. They hit one deep ball to Christian Watson. They hit the ball down the deep over route to Musgrave, which is nice to see him able to do that in back-to-back weeks. Sunday against Pittsburgh, I was worried about their ability or lack thereof to block TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. And I wouldn't say they stoned him, but, they held their own, considering Tom is a second-year rookie. TJ Watt's going to be a Hall of Famer. And Highsmith is a really good player in his own right as well. And a family friend. Shout out Alex Highsmith. You're awesome. And everything you do is great. But not the point here. That's not sarcastic either, in case anybody's wondering. We could talk about that off record. But in terms of how I feel about the offense, like now is my next question is kind of the Packers have faced two offenses this season that are in the top half of the league in scoring, Detroit and Minnesota. And that's it. They are now about to face three of the top 13 offenses. In Kansas City, the team that's lowest is Kansas City, who happens to have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. That'll be the third of the three. They're not going to win these games 20-3 like they did against the Rams. Or, if they had won on Sunday, it would have been 26-23 or something to that ilk. You're going to have to put up points. Can you keep up score for score with somebody like Justin Herbert, Jared Goff in that Lions offense, Patrick Mahomes? Like, I don't know. And that's the problem when you're limited offensively and haven't been overly explosive. It's hard to keep up with teams like that, because this is a league where, I've said it before, the final score of the Super Bowl last year was 38-35. There is no win with defense. And like, you have to be able to score points. I think that's not saying you can be the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL, but a prerequisite to being a really good team is the ability to score 30 points and do so efficiently. The Packers don't have that. But the encouragement you have out of Sunday's game is the passing game is Jaden Reed, a couple big plays. Dontavion Wicks, a couple big plays. Luke Musgrave, a couple big plays. A guy I'm sure we'll talk about, the only real disappointing part was Christian Watson isn't making any of those big. And that's their still, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but like, that's still their most explosive offensive player as far as potential goes. The run game, not a whole lot in terms of explosive. They had the one run by Dillon. If you take that away, which I know you can't do that, but if you take that away, it was like 22 carries for 65 yards. It's better, but let me ask you this way. Let's just say, hypothetically, every game for the rest of the season goes exactly like that one. There's some flashes of good, but not enough. And the Packers end up losing, and say they lose the rest of their games that way. Again, a ridiculous question on its face. But if that's the case, how do you feel about, is that a case where they're 3-14, but you feel good about the quarterback? The answer to me is still no. And if they're 3-14, in theory, they should be in position to grab one of those top two guys. And I think almost regardless, if they're in position to grab one of those top two guys, it's no brainer. There's no world, in my opinion, because this is becoming a popular thing on the internet as well, where the Packers are drafting second and they should say, well, the team in front of us grabbed Drake or Caleb. We're going to pass on Drake or Caleb and draft Marvin Harrison and put this receiver on Jordan. Like, that is not something I will ever sign off on. I've said it about 1,000 times. If Green Bay's in position to grab a guy like Marvin Harrison, they probably need a quarterback. So that's my question back to you, is if it's better, but if it looks like that consistently for the rest of the season and they keep losing, do you then feel, because I know you saw my poll, would you give him the Daniel Jones contract?
Yeah.
And these people like, no, I wouldn't give him that. Maybe like a 2-year deal for $40 million. Guys, here's a newsflash. They did that already. They gave him the sweetheart contract that you guys are asking for. There is no, hey, Jordan, how about you sign with us for, cheaper? Let's do the Jimmy Garoppolo deal. You know what he was going to say? No.
Yeah.
Because some team will pay him. And before you guys laugh at that, they will. The same was true of Daniel Jones. And I know that sounds stupid. This is a league starved for quarterback play. Somebody would have paid Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and I think, all right, so let me start with that point about the quarterback, because I think that's relevant, because I chimed in on Twitter and mentioned that too, because I'm in agreement, and I think we've been very much in lockstep with that. And I had someone respond to me, and totally fair, appreciate the conversation, that there are other options there. You could do shorter deals, you could do, incentive laden and all of this. here's my counter to that, because if the team was the only side that came up with the deals and it was, yes, we're going to retain these 7 players and we're going to make whatever deal we want, and they're just going to have to accept it. And True North Packers fan, our guy in the YouTube comments, is the same thing. Well, what about the Geno Smith contract? So I'll get to Geno in a second here. But if there's not just a one-sided thing. This isn't just Brian Gutekunst writes up a contract and says, you know what, Jordan, we want to keep you around, but not for too much. Here's a 3-year deal for $22 million a year. That's your only option. If you don't sign it, you're out of the NFL. That's not how it works. The market sets what these guys are worth. And the market has indicated that a quarterback of the caliber of a Daniel Jones, who had one good season, is worth what he got. That's how the market works. That's how it operates. And I don't even think that was a good season last year. He threw 15 touchdown passes in 16 games. Like, that's all it took. Now, is that the Giants' fault for giving him that contract? Yeah, duh. But that is the going rate for a guy of that caliber. And I think unless we see an unbelievable metamorphosis in the next 8 weeks, that's the category of quarterback that Jordan Love is in right now. I think that's fair to say. He has not proven anything beyond that. So if you're Jordan Love and you're Jordan Love's representation, why would you take a deal below market value? If you're saying that guy got that, I'm certainly no worse than that guy. I'm younger or about the same age as that guy. I want a deal at that market value. It's not simply, well, why don't you just offer him 3 years, $22 million a year? Because there's two sides to this. There's another option here, and that is Jordan Love tells you no. And frankly, I would rather be in a position, if I'm the Packers, where I know we're moving on and we're going to go after Williams or May or Penix or McCarthy or whoever, than expect to re-sign Jordan Love only to be told no. Then you're really behind the 8 ball. So that's the position you risk there if you lowball the guy, and that you don't sign guys generally below market rate, especially when they are quarterbacks. And to the Geno Smith point,
this is a decision they have to make now, or not now, like right today, but
before next year.
Yeah, the reason that Green Bay gave Jordan the contract they did in the offseason is because teams don't do lame duck quarterbacks. It's just not a thing. One of Rodgers' biggest complaints coming into the 2021 season was that he was a lame duck quarterback. He didn't want to be that. There's a commitment. Not only that, you're telling your coaches, who are like, with the way this season is trending, like everybody's on the hot seat next year anyways. So you want to add extra pressure to that. Like, there's got to be some level of commitment to that, where for everyone to say, oh, he's under contract next year. Sure, last years of contracts for quarterbacks are fake years for the most part, because lame duck quarterbacks in recent memory have been Daniel Jones, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins in Washington,
and
this year. And that's about it. You know, and
it doesn't happen. Yeah,
no,
exactly.
It just doesn't happen. Like, he's either the long-term answer or he's not. And I know that's not a fair situation. I know that's not fair to Jordan Love. It's not fair to Matt LaFleur. It's not fair. But this is the position they put themselves in when you drafted a quarterback, when your starting quarterback had 4 years left on his contract. You thought he was declining. You were wrong. He wins MVP back-to-back seasons. So you give him a 3rd year. You eat 3/4 of Jordan Love's guaranteed portion of his rookie contract. Then you have this compromise meet in the middle deal for his second contract. This is a decision. Oh, yes, of course. Joe Flacco. Now, if Jordan Love becomes the same version with the same results of Joe Flacco, I'll take it. But otherwise, this is the decision and the position this team has put themselves in. And it's why I think, to some degree, not full degree, the way the Packers approach things is a little outdated. And I mean that really specifically, like for the people who on the internet, and I think we talked about them this week, saying, well, that's not the way the Packers do things. If they're picking second, they're not going to say Jordan Love isn't their quarterback, because they're not going to say that only after 17 starts. Well, just because the Packers aren't going to do that in theory doesn't mean the way they do things is 100% perfect. The Eagles drafted a quarterback when Carson Wentz was 1 year removed from an MVP season. And they were in the mix for Russell Wilson before Jalen Hurts' breakout season. Like, sometimes the best moves are the ones you don't make, but there's a level of aggression And especially at that position, I think you need to be willing to say, nope, not good. Like the 49ers, for example, when Jim Harbaugh and that crew had Alex Smith, and they were willing to move to Colin Kaepernick because they knew there was a ceiling with Alex Smith, and that was everything had to be perfect. Kaepernick, they thought, gave him an opportunity, a better opportunity to get to and win the Super Bowl. They got to a Super Bowl and could have won. Maybe they were right. Like, I don't know. There needs to be, but it's that level of aggression. They were willing to bench Alex Smith in a season when they were like 11-2 or something like that. They had a really good record when that happened. Green Bay has to have that level of aggression with this team because that's the position you put yourselves. If this was Jordan Love's second year on his contract, then sure, of course you're not doing something like that.
Yeah.
Unless it's something drastic, like having the first or second overall pick. But if it's the last year of the last real year of his contract. So sorry, man, it's poo or get off the pot time. Just how it is.
Nice of you to make that PG. The other thing too that I wanted to make sure to bring up about this, because I wanted to make the Geno point. You've got to be like conscious of where these guys are in their careers. And I don't say this to, throw any disrespect to our guy True North, because I think it's a fair point. But like, Geno was a failed starter, a failed starter out of maybe the worst quarterback class of all time in 2013. Historically dreadful quarterback class. Failed starter, journeyman backup who just happened to fall bass backwards into an unbelievable situation where he won a quarter. He was in camp battling against Drew Lock, who sucks. He is bad. And before you bring it up, I already know Brian Gutekunst liked Drew Lock in the draft. But Drew Lock sucks. He is not a good NFL player. And Geno had to battle him in camp to win that job, and then just fell, again, ass backwards into the job he has right now. And I work next to a Seattle Seahawks fan every single day, and he tweeted this weekend, I am very done with the Geno Smith experience. Like, that is not exactly like a rosy situation either. Totally different, I think, in terms of career, in terms of expectations, in terms of the team around them, the style of coaching, all of those different things. And I think that's a big reason why you can't look at that particular situation. Now, I do want to revisit the other question that you did bring up a little bit earlier. If you get this kind of production from the offense and from your quarterback, and you extrapolate that over the rest of the season, and this is what it looks like, and the team is going to lose almost all, if not all, of the rest of their games, and you get this level of offense, no, that's not good enough. I 100% would agree with the point I think you were leading us to. That's not good enough to say, this is the guy, this is the system, everything is fine, the pieces are in place to be good long-term as it is currently set up. But that's also why I said, are you encouraged that things are trending in the right direction? I think the Rams game, and granted, the Rams were hapless. Brett Rippon is probably the worst quarterback who's taken a snap this year in the NFL. Absolutely dreadful. Did not get a whole lot of his uncle's talents, right? They were bad. The Packers looked a smidge better in that game than they have for the majority of the season. I thought this Pittsburgh game was another slight step above that. Truly baby steps we're talking about here. But again, slight improvement from there. I don't think you can survive over the next however many games it is, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever it is. I don't think you can, 8 weeks, you can survive just making those tiny little incremental steps. Because then by the time you get to week 18, hey, we've been improving every single week. But if you're improving by that little, then by the end of the season, you've made what? Like 1.25 full steps of improvement. And I know I'm using arbitrary units here, but that's probably not enough to get you there. But if you have a week like the Rams week, and then what we saw against Pittsburgh, and then in this game against the Chargers, who have a defense that, while full of talent, can be gotten to, can be attacked, can be scored on. If you see, again, hey, Jordan Love looked crisp, or, Wicks and Reed, and sure, throw Watson in there. They all looked really good in this game, and the pass protection was good, and we moved the ball on the ground a little bit, and you see that success stacked on top of each other. Then 8 weeks from now, I might be feeling a lot different and say, yes, I think this team that is the youngest offense in the NFL, but they're not rookies anymore. By the time you get to week 18, you're not a rookie anymore. You've played essentially a full season of football at that point. You've been in the program long enough at that point. You should be able to project a little bit more what you're going to be able to do long term. If we see steady improvement from here on, yes, I will feel more optimistic about it. That's the hope, but that's really the whole crux of the argument, right? Is that if you're seeing this right now, no, that's not good enough. If this is a stepping stone and this is a platform you build on, I do think it can get to that point.
Yeah, and like I said, it's got to get to a point where they got to start scoring more points, man. Like they've scored more than 20 points, so 21 or more points twice this year, and both of them were the first 2 games of the season. They've scored 20 points once since the bye week. Like, they're not putting enough points on the scoreboard for whatever the reason. Like this Sunday, it was a red zone issue. A lot of times they struggle just kind of getting in their own way. But now they're starting to face some better offenses coming up here. And again, you're not going to be competitive in a game where you only score 17 points. Against Detroit, it was 27-3 going into the second half. But they're going to have to do more than that. Again, this is a game where you have to be able to score points, and they're going to face, towards the end of the year, they get one of those balloon bounces where after the Chiefs, they play the Giants, who might be the worst team in the NFL. Then they play Tampa Bay, who's fine. They play Carolina, who's awful. They play the Vikings, who are better than they are. And then they play Chicago, who they haven't lost to since the Ronald Reagan administration. So that's the hard part. Is last year, we got that fraudulent 4-game winning streak that I think we all knew was fraudulent, but they did it anyways. And that kind of saved some jobs, quite frankly. Maybe not Matt LaFleur's necessarily, but some people around him. If Green Bay doesn't lose the last game of the season to finish 8-9 and miss the playoffs, say they finish 6-11, 5-12, like they very easily could have last year, it probably looks a lot different in Titletown than it does right now. And I'm starting to wonder, did that delay things by a full season? And it very well might have.
No, I think you're spot on. And we'll get to the end of the season and, we'll dive into this at a future point. But there's going to have to be some tough conversations about the coaching staff beyond the head coach. Because I know I used the phrase bloodlust on Twitter this weekend. It absolutely is. With the ability to share our opinions with everybody all at once and the ability to be emotional and reactive to things, there is absolutely a bloodlust for jobs.
All people ever want is a scout. That's it.
Yeah. And that's simply what it comes down to. Now, does Joe Barry deserve to have his job next year? No, but I'm not going to make any definitive statements about a number of things until we find out, is that guy going to be kept? Is he not going to be kept? Are there going to be philosophical changes? Is everything going to be the same? Are you going to fire him just to promote from within and make no improvements? I think there's a whole lot of things to address further on with that, and we'll have plenty of time to get to that point. You mentioned it a moment ago. We were talking about this over the weekend, and I think you and I are in a fairly similar place on this topic. Christian Watson came up a little bit ago. I am right there with you that in terms of potential, in terms of skill set, I do not think there is a single player on the offense who's got a ceiling as high as, potential as high as, the ability to totally change a game with one or few touches in the way that Christian Watson does. I, honest to God, believe he has that sort of God-given natural ability. Here's the problem. He has not been good this year, and that's not supposed to be insulting. I'm not going to be one of the weirdo trolls who's like, oh, he's injured all the time. He can't be any good. I hate him. Let me tweet at his family. No, that's weirdo behavior, and you should never do it. But he's played in 6 of 9 games so far. He's supposed to be your number one receiver, not just number one goofy gadget guy. He is supposed to be your number one wide receiver option. He has 14 catches on 33 targets in 6 games, 236 yards, 1 touchdown. And I know, like you said earlier, you can't just take away a big play. We know his biggest play of the season was a busted coverage. We know that for a fact. We have been told that was a busted coverage. That is a 77-yard gain. Without that play, he's got what does that end up being? 169 yards, 159 yards for the
You're
entire
asking me to do
year?
math like that on the fly? There's no fucking way.
Yeah, 100. Hey, when you do football play-by-play, you got to learn to do at least addition and subtraction on the fly. Like that's it. That's not good enough. And I want it to be good. I want it to work because he seems like a good kid and he seems like he's got the work ethic and he's got an unbelievable skill set of just natural gifts, but it hasn't been good enough. And you look at the rest of this wide receiver room. Like I said earlier, I think Reed is a difference maker, not just like a nice player. I think he is a difference maker kind of receiver.
Yes.
I think Wicks also has that potential. Dobbs is probably the least special of any of these guys. I know you certainly feel that way, but at the very least, he's a fine player and he clearly has chemistry with Love. And if Love ends up being the guy long-term, short-term, whatever, it helps to have a guy there who he clearly has some amount of chemistry with. That is valuable. Right now, Watson is not giving you damn near anything, and I don't know if he's still banged up. I don't know if he is playing cautiously because he's scared of getting hurt or what, but you've got to have more out of a guy who you have staked so much capital, both in terms of time, draft stock, etc., so much capital in. You've got to be able to get more out of him, and I hope that comes soon. But I'm worried, man. I am genuinely worried. And Jacob fizzled out here for a second, but we'll get him back in just a moment. But I am worried about the kind of production he has had so far this year. And I'm worried about what he's going to be able to do the rest of the season, because frankly, I'm not comfortable banking on, well, this guy's going to suck and do nothing for a half a season, then explode for 8 touchdowns in 7 weeks. Like I would not be comfortable building a team around a guy like that.
No. And when you talk about the receiver room, I don't think there's a guy in there right now that you could say like, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Like we don't not upgrade this position because we have this guy here. Like they don't, like you don't pass on Keon Coleman, just for example, and you say, well, we got Christian and we got Romeo. The Packers' best receivers this year have been the rooks. Wicks and Reed, like you mentioned specifically, and Musgrave definitely starting to come on as of late. I get quite a bit of flack because I'm friends with a couple of North Dakota Staters who are Christian Watson apologists. Those are the critics' words, not necessarily mine. And I do a podcast with Christian's brother every week. That being said, Watson is a God-given ability. He has everything he could ever want. And Trey said this probably 2 or 3 weeks ago with Christian, and Matt LaFleur has kind of alluded to it a little bit in his recent pressers, is that the devil is in the details. And, Christian doesn't have the nuances and the details of the NFL down. And it's tough to ask him to be, they put him in an unfair spot in general. We all thought he was going to be ready for it because of the way his season ended last year. But to be the team's number 1 wide receiver as a second-year player with a first-year starting quarterback who, frankly has struggled with some spotty ball placement. It's tough for me from the standpoint of anytime something goes wrong when the ball is thrown towards Watson, like it seems like so much of the blame, like all of the blame immediately goes to Watson. And I don't think that's fair. Like the interception against the Raiders where Watson didn't come back for the ball. Like that ball is underthrown by 4 or 5 yards. The ball on Sunday is underthrown a little, and it's a great play by Patrick Peterson. And people are like, well, why didn't Watson do this or that or whatever? Now, granted, is Christian having a good season? No. You mentioned the numbers, and you can throw whatever caveats, whatever you want in there. Like all the other guys are figuring out ways to make plays. Watson is not. But you know who knows that? Watson. He said word for word after the Raiders game that his number has been called a bunch and he didn't make enough plays considering how much his number was called. I still cautiously believe in him and think he'll be able to put things together. And like we just talked about, you talk about receivers. There's one receiver on this roster, one, who has potential to be a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, and that's Christian Watson. And that doesn't mean he's going to be, because potential and $5 buys you half of a cup of coffee at Starbucks. But it's true. Watson has the most potential of any of the guys that are on this team. Dobbs, like you mentioned earlier, he's a red zone third, fourth receiver, in my opinion. Jaden Reed, I think, can be a guy that you could potentially run your offense through in the slot, but who knows on there. Wicks, nice player, same thing. But there's one guy that has game-breaking ability, and that's it. It's him. And the Packers need him to be better. They have talked about that as much. It's been a struggle, and there's no way around it, though. So I understand the frustrations. And that's just the way that it's going to be. When you don't – it's still interesting to me how when something goes bad, when the ball's thrown to Watson, he gets all this vitriol. But, like, if Romeo Dobbs drops a pass or something, not just Romeo, but whoever, like, it's not the same. You know what I mean? I don't understand why Watson is hated more for making mistakes than the other guys are, if that makes any sense. It's not like Christian is this diva that's talked about how awesome he is and has nothing to back it up. Like, Watson doesn't even talk. Like, he barely says anything.
Very much keeps to himself.
Right. So I know his family has a lot of things to say, but at the same standpoint, and again, maybe I'm not the most objective person because I'm friends with his brother, but like, can you guys imagine half the shit that's in these people's mentions? Talking about their son, their brother, their whatever, their family member, someone they love. Like, I can promise you, like, I am nowhere near the celebrity and never will be the celebrity that Christian Watson is. But if somebody said something about my kid, yeah, I am coming after you on the internet. And I don't care that you're an internet troll. Like, that's just how it is. And I have done that to a lesser degree, obviously. So I don't know. I don't understand these people that are like trying to tell other grown men and women what to tweet and how to tweet and stuff like that. Like Peter Bukowski and guys that I'm friends with, like, Ross Uglum and national media members and all that stuff. They're great. They're entitled to their opinions. Guess what? So are Trey and his dad and all these other people too. And yeah, maybe they come across as biased because Christian's their brother, their son, their whatever. But like, they're also the first people to tell you that Christian needs to play better. They're not the ones blaming every other thing on everyone else either. I think they're willing to point out that some of those things aren't very good, and they're not. But yeah, I think if you want to draw a circle around the biggest thing that could make this offense look a hell of a lot better between now and the end of the season, it's number 9 looking like number 9 from a year ago, not this guy that we've gotten so far this year.
And I hope you get, like, I hope it wasn't like too hard, because the numbers are bad and the production hasn't been bad. And like you said, he would point to that himself. The people who are in his inner circle would point to that as well. But like, I always want every Packer to be good, except Martellus Bennett. I wasn't really rooting for him in the beginning, and then he turned out to be a dickhead anyway. So, hey, look how that worked out. Anyway, beside the point, I hope he has an incredible week against the Chargers, and I hope it only gets better from there. And I agree that I don't get it. I don't know why some players invoke that sort of frustration. I have become more and more aware of this year than I think I ever was before. Players who get banged up a lot don't get the grace from fans or media members or whoever that I think they deserve. The college team I cover religiously, the Kansas Jayhawks, starting quarterback this year, Jalen Daniels. I think I mentioned this the other week. Had a back injury all year. He's likely going to miss most of this season. And there have been total weirdos all year who have said weird shit about him and have said he's been hurt and have, like, he's faking the injury and he, yada, 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 all these things. Like, dude, people get hurt. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Some people get hurt more often than others. Some people have serious injuries. It's the same thing with Bakhtiari. Like, he's weird and he, says weird stuff sometimes, but he works hard and he's trying to get back, and he's not half the things that people say about him. So all that to say, like, I don't get the anger at guys like that. I don't get the, I get the frustration with the situation more than I get it with the individual. And I'm not the kind of person who's going to tweet mean things at someone. And like, if they're going after you, I get it. And if you don't like it, then ignore it, block them, mute them, do something else. That does not affect me in the way that the actual play on the field, personally, I feel affects me. We've got some other stuff to get to. We got another game coming up this weekend. Packers Chargers. And before we get to our picks for the game, I want to ask you about one of the most polarizing players in the NFL. I want to ask you about Justin Herbert, because I think so this is funny for work back a few years ago. So this would have been the 2020 draft. I was doing a lot more NFL draft coverage along with what I did for GameOnWisconsin.com, RIP. I was doing a ranking of the different positions: quarterback, wide receiver, running back, etc. And my quarterback rankings, I had Joe Burrow number 1. I had Tua number 2. I've always been a big Tua guy. I had Jordan Love number 3. And I had Justin Herbert number 4. I thought after watching him at Oregon, Justin Herbert was not the be all end all like he was made out to be. Turns out Mario Cristobal is just dumb as rocks, and Justin Herbert actually is a very talented quarterback. He deserved to be drafted where he was drafted. There's a lot that he has done well. He also has not been on the team that's on the winning side of anything of consequence. He was the starting quarterback in one of the most historically embarrassing upset losses, come from behind losses in the history of the NFL last year against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the wild card round. I don't believe in QB wins, but that's also how quarterbacks are judged. And the Chargers have not won anything. They are also the Chargers, and you have to factor that into account. So I will open the floor to you. How do we feel about Justin Herbert? Is he in the category of Mahomes is alone, obviously, but is he in that next group of, maybe not Josh Allen anymore, but Burrow and Jalen Hurts and maybe Tua and Herbert's there? Is he in that next group where he's more Dak Kirk-like? What is Herbert? And of course, no matter what we say going into this weekend, he's going to destroy this defense probably from Green Bay, but what is Justin Herbert?
Yeah. So Mahomes, like you said, is in a tier by himself. Yep. And then it's Burrow and Jalen in the second tier. I think Josh Allen should be there, but I mean, he's really struggled with some turnovers this year and everything like that. Herbert, here's the thing. Like you said, quarterback wins isn't a thing. That being said, there is plenty of blame to go in the quarterback's direction if you are winning 27-7 or 24-7, whatever the score was against Jacksonville, and blow that. That's kind of why part of the legacy of Matt Ryan is blowing that 28-3. Like, the quarterback's job at that point is to manage the game and make sure they win. And they haven't done that. Herbert, I don't buy into the Emmanuel Acho of he's a social media quarterback kind of thing either. Like you said, quarterback wins isn't a thing, but it also kind of is. And that's kind of what I've talked about with the Jordan Love thing. Not to bring everything back to Jordan Love, but when I said before the year started, like, there isn't a scenario that plays out in my head where the Packers go 3-14, and I feel like Jordan Love proves he's the long-term answer at quarterback.
Sure.
It just isn't. Now, that being said, when you look at the way the team around Justin Herbert has been built, the head coach is a bottom-tier head coach in the NFL, in my opinion. And it's kind of funny watching the nerds that loved him because he went for it on like every fourth down. Now realize he actually sucks, but whatever. That's a different story for a different day. Their defense just gave up like 600 yards or something crazy like that on Sunday. And granted, Detroit's a good offense, but like the Chargers are like the kings of finding ways to underachieve. And that goes back to Phillip Rivers for as many years they had. And some of that goes to the quarterback as well, because Rivers shrunk in the biggest moments. They had opportunities to win games. Herbert's only played in the one playoff game, but they shrunk in that particular moment as well. If you had me just off the top of my head, Burrow, Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen for sure. And then after that, I think Justin Herbert's in that conversation. I would take him before Tua, for example.
Okay.
If you give Justin Herbert without the tossing of players back into games with concussions like Mike McDaniel, but that type of coaching staff with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Watt, like, I feel like Justin Herbert would set the league on fire if he had those two guys, which isn't a knock on Tua necessarily, even though it kind of sounds like one. But I would rather have Herbert than him. But that being said, you got to play better in some of these bigger spots. And what was it? There was a game, and again, not all of this is on Herbert, but the Raider game where it could have ended in a tie and they made the playoffs and the Raiders were like in either way. And they found a way to lose that game too. Like, Herbert's
it's the best game of his career to this. Like the star-making game of his career was a loss. It was a loss in a do or die game, and I think that kind of sums up the whole argument, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, I'm not trying to make him out to be a bum because he certainly isn't that. I'd rather have him than like Dak Prescott or Jared Goff.
I would take him.
Or some of these other guys.
I'd take him on this team.
I would take him in Green Bay tomorrow. If they want to do that, I would certainly do something like that. But is he? When people are like, "Oh, he's on the same level as Mahomes," no, he's not. He's on the same level as Burrow. No, he's not. Even Josh Allen, for some of his shortcomings and issues with turning the ball, Allen has played well in some really, really big games. Herbert kind of hasn't. That's just how it is for now. But he's really good. I think he's going to have a huge game on Sunday. So by the end of the game, I'll probably think that Herbert is the best quarterback in the NFL.
He's sure going to look like it. I just saw it on Twitter moments ago.
He needs a haircut. I hate his hair, and that's because I can't do it.
Oh, I was going to say, is that a jealousy thing, or is that an actual style thing?
No, I can't do it. My hair grows this way. Like I would
Me
look
too.
like Christian Watson with his afro. That is what I would look like, but like the white guy version of it.
Mine also grows out, not down. My wife has asked me before, like, have you thought about growing your hair down? I was like, I can't. It doesn't do that. It grows out. It does not grow down like that. Our pal Mike Kawano says Herbert's going for 505 touchdowns.
This is coping though, because Mrs. Kawano, the much, 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 much better half of the Kawano family, is a Chargers fan.
Well, okay, that makes some. See, that's a nice win-win though, because either Mike's team wins or his wife's teams win, and his wife is happy, and that makes everyone more happy. So Mike's in the best position of anyone this weekend.
I'm more selfish than that. If my wife cared about football, I would not want her team to win. Like I would want my team to win against hers, and I will be miserable. So that's just how that is.
That my wife and I are pitted together against that because we root for college teams in the same conference.
I used to date a woman who was a Bears fan and an Ohio State Buckeyes fan. That was not a good experience.
Do you know where she was on January 6th, 2021 by chance?
No, I got a pretty good idea. We can talk about that off the record. I've been subpoenaed to talk about that.
All right, let's get to the game itself. Packers, unsurprisingly, an underdog in this game. 3-point underdog at home. It would be worse if this was a neutral site or game in LA. Although, honestly, there might be more. There are just as many Packers fans as this game is being played at SoFi. Literally, there would be more because it's a bigger stadium. Charger fans, there aren't many of them. Shout out to Alex Katzen. What is the difference maker in this game? Let's look at it this way. Let's slant it from the Green Bay perspective. If the Packers are going to win this game, and I don't think they will, I think the Chargers will end up winning this game. But if the Packers are going to win this game, what does it have to look like? Is it a game that has to be ugly because the Packers offense has been ugly? You have to bring a team down to your level. Do the Packers have to get in a shootout? And if they do that and Love gets in a rhythm, they can win it. What kind of game does this have to be if the Packers are going to win it?
Yeah, I don't think this will happen because I think the path to victory for Green Bay is that they will have to win in a shootout. And that deals with Watson and Reed and Wicks and Musgrave and Dobbs and like just sprinkles from guys making explosive plays on offense. Like I think they need to score 27, 30, 34 points to win a game like that on Sunday. Are they equipped to do that? I don't know. What they're going to have to do. I think the best way for them to win is something that I don't think will happen, which is like Herbert has to turn the ball over Herbert/Chargers have to turn the ball over 2 or 3 times. The Packers don't get any takeaways, so it's hard to envision that. And Green Bay just kind of has to muck it up and win. Like, you remember when like Northwestern was good and they would give a Big Ten team a run or something like that, and they would
Badger fans, it was always Wisconsin.
Yeah, like that's kind of how I feel like the Packers is an old school Northwestern, make it ugly, make it stupid. Kind of like how Rutgers wins now with Greg Schiano to keep with the Big Ten theme. Like, but I don't think Green Bay can do that because they don't run the ball well enough to do that. And they don't stop the run and they don't stop anything. Nothing. They stop nothing. So I don't know how you slow. Like, it's really just hoping Herbert throws you a couple. And even when he does, that's no guarantee Green Bay catches it. Like, they have more dropped interceptions the last couple of weeks than they do actual interceptions.
That's good. That's a good stat. I appreciate you bringing my mood down with that. Seasonal affective disorder wasn't doing that already. The matchup for me that I'm most interested in of all the things going on the field, I want to see Carrington Valentine matched up with Keenan Allen, honestly. And maybe he gets destroyed. And maybe that's just a bridge too far, because I think Valentine has been a nice surprise. He was a great camp story. He's played pretty well over the course of the year. I think he's been quite good over the last couple of weeks, especially since Russell Douglas got traded. And then, by the way, Sewell played pretty well for Buffalo on Sunday or on Monday night this week. But anyway, that's the big matchup. Like, if we are going to find out, do we know if Valentine is a guy going forward, if he is a dude for this roster going forward? Not to say he's, going to replace Ja or anything, but if he's going to be a piece for this team for the long run, how is he going to match up against Keenan Allen? And Allen's probably going to get the better of him and it's not just going to be those two. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but my point being, I want to see him against a guy who's a great route technician. I don't think Allen is an elite wide receiver, but I do think he is a really crisp route runner. He's a savvy veteran. He's got a good connection with his quarterback. I want to see more of Valentine matched up against guys like that the rest of this season, because I want to know, where is he right now as a young guy, as still a rookie? Where is he in his development against some of the better receivers in the NFL? So if he's able to go out there and he looks great in limited snaps, a majority of snaps, whatever it ends up being, as the closest guy to Keenan Allen, that to me is the most interesting one-on-one matchup, I think. We've got another one here from Mastodon in the YouTube comments who says, Chargers do love to abandon the run. That plays right into our hands. Yeah, that's true. I would much rather not have to watch this defense try to tackle Austin Eckler after the entire defensive line is swallowed up into oblivion immediately after the snap. That'd be nice.
Yeah. But
you sound so confident.
The problem is Herbert is far and away the best quarterback. Like, the best quarterback they've faced to date is Kirk Cousins. And no disrespect to Kirk, but this is different level.
Kirk or Goff?
Goff. I mean, pick your poison. Either one. 6-1, half dozen the other. It's the same. They're the same dude. Like, I guess I would rather the Chargers throw it a bunch, because they'll probably score faster that way. So I can at least see the offense try and keep up with them.
Maybe you tip some passes.
Maybe you tip a couple that are picked. Yeah, because the old adage, right? 2 things can happen, or 3 things can happen when you pass, and 2 of them aren't good.
And 2 are bad.
And 2 are bad. So that could be, if Quay Walker can't play, I'm kind of worried about Eckler's ability in the passing game as well. And they don't have Jair Alexander either. Then you're talking about Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon, and like literal practice squad corners. So,
hey, you know that we're not allowing disrespect of my guy, the Washburn Ichabod, Corey Ballantyne here.
I am not trying to, but and he did some nice things on Sunday. But yeah, this is the way things are right now. So it just kind of is. Again, I have no confidence in the defense to stop anything unless like they just sack Herbert a bunch. That's the only way.
No. All right, give me your pick. Who you got?
Chargers 34-17.
34-17. That's a slightly more normal score that I'm going with. I'm going Chargers 29-16 in this one. That is going to be 2 touchdowns, a blocked extra point, and a field goal for the Packers. That's how they're going to get to 16.
Green Bay is getting an extra point blocked?
What was that?
Like Anders Carlson is getting a PAT blocked?
Yes.
At Green Bay? Okay,
yes.
Yeah,
he will have an extra point blocked, but then we'll also make a field goal. That's how the Packers will get to 16. I mean, until I see, I'm not going to see it with the defense, and that's more than anything. Like we're not going to see it with the defense this year, but offensively, if we can continue to see at least a little positive momentum week after week, I will feel a little bit better. Put up some points, score again in the first quarter. That was fun. That was nice. Didn't everyone enjoy that? Everyone, hands up. Do we enjoy first quarter points? Yes. Awesome. Okay. 100% approval rate here. Let's do that again this weekend. Keep showing improvement. Please give me a reason to keep this game on TV. I am begging you. We are going to be back coming up next week. Win, lose, or draw. We'll be talking about this one. Chiefs. I'm so freaking Chiefs brained right now from work. That's the first team I think of. Packers, Chargers. Plus the Chiefs play the Chargers every year, twice a year. Anyway, Packers, Chargers, whoever wins, lose, draw, whatever, doesn't matter. We're talking about it next Tuesday on the Pick Six. Make sure you check out the podcast everywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, etc. He's Jacob Westendorf. I am Brendan Dworzynski. We will talk to you guys coming up next week, and the Freezers next across the Game On Wisconsin network. Talk to you guys next week.